It's about the power of benchmarking. And I learned when I was creating this Take 5 moment that there are a bunch of different kinds of benchmarking. But for this moment, we're only going to talk about functional benchmarking because that's what we're doing right now, all of us. You've been doing this all week, so none of this is a surprise to you, right? Now you know more about industry trends. You've got some comparisons that you can take back and talk to your teams and your peers and your bosses about, and we have improvement ideas. So don't forget the power of benchmarking. We're going to come back to that in a little while. So just for a quick minute, I want to talk a little bit about who we are. Where do I come from? I come from Houston, the second place baseball team this year. Woo! Go Astros! Second's better than 28th, I'll tell you that, though. We work, and there are several members of my team here as well. Our team, not my team, we belong to each other. We work in oil and gas. We are TechnipFMC. We are 48 countries, numerous offices in those countries, and 37,000 people strong. And you can see how important sharing knowledge is in our company, just like it is in yours. Okay, so this is a quick audience participation moment. I would like to know, for something we're going to talk about in a little while, where people report in KM, because for me, I've reported just about everywhere you can report, except to the people who run the kitchen. So who in here is in IT? Just a couple, all right. Who's in quality? One or two. Who is in HR? Okay. Learning, just in case that's not HR? All right. How about strategy? Got some strategy. And R&D? Wow, did I miss anyone? Legal, of course. And the lady from Apple who leads is legal. Yes? What else? Innovation, of course. Processes. And engineering. That's like R&D as well, right? Anybody else R&D engineering? Okay. Anybody else I missed? Customer operations. Okay, I like it. Diversity here. Lucky you. Digital team, not IT. So there's a difference. Okay. You get to do the fun stuff. All right, that's great. So thank you, all of you. We're going to talk about partnerships later, and it's interesting to know who's where. So there are 3 key themes for this talk. 3 key themes that might be important for all of us as we go into 2020 and beyond boldly as KMers. One of them is we have to embrace technology. It's been with us since the beginning. Well, not so much really in the early 90s, but it is coming on like a freight train and it is never going to stop. It's accelerating. Do you agree? Breathtaking speed? Okay, good. I'm seeing some nodding. That's good. You're with me. Secondly, and this used to say it's about people, but I got brave. I changed it to love people because KM is first, last, always, and forevermore about people. People are the reason we do what we do. We talk about business value and all that, but it's people who use knowledge management tools and strategies and people who will make them work or not. And then finally, the third one is we have to be flexible. I learned this from my KM friend Dan Flynn from Nalco. Your start game is never your end game in knowledge management. Sometimes your start game in KM at the beginning of the week is not the same as your end game at the end of the week. Those are some of the weeks we live through as we go through mergers and acquisitions, and I won't say any more about that, but you can imagine anything you want. Okay, so now we come to one of the key reasons that I have my notes here, which is that I want you to meet my grandmother. I promise this is relevant. That's my grandmother, the little tow-headed girl between the 2 boys on the little moon there in 1927. She was born in 1920, and when she turned 90, that's about 9 years ago now, we had a great big birthday party to celebrate, and I wrote a little poem for her. I'm not going to read the poem, but I am going to share the intro. And as I read it to you, I want you to remember that it was written 9 years ago, and I want you to think to yourself what is already obsolete or radically different just in that time. So, Grandma, The momentous changes that have transpired since the beginning of the 20th century to the current day bear reflection. You arrived in 1920 in one world and have lived to see it become yet another. From the jazz age to the digital age, from flappers to rappers, from Betty Crocker to Martha Stewart, from the Victrola to the iPod, from Encyclopedia Britannica to Wikipedia, from the Model T to smart cars, from the WPA highway project to the information superhighway, from biplanes to the space shuttle, from Halley's Comet to the Hubble telescope, and from Jim Crow to Barack O. Now, remember, that was 9 years ago, so anybody have anything to point out that's changed? iPod, yes, iPod. And smart cars aren't just smart cars anymore, right? They're self-driving. I could have gone on. We could have talked about from key maps, anyone remember those? To Google Maps, from Ask Ann Landers to Ask Siri. So the point here is that the pace of change, oh my goodness, I didn't show you Grandma. There she is at her 95th. The pace of change has increased exponentially, and every single one of those things, except maybe Martha Stewart, was fueled by technology, and I'm sure technology is in there somewhere too. So technology feels like it's accelerating, because it is. Anybody ever heard of Ray Kurzweil, the futurist? Yeah. Well, we had some futurists here this week, and they told us some really cool things about the future. And this is another reason I needed the notes, because I have a quote from him. Technology goes beyond mere tool-making. It's the process of creating ever more powerful technology using the tools from the previous round of innovation. He called it the law of accelerating returns. And basically, he's just saying that technology is going to speed up and speed up and speed up, and the cycles are going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And a great example is the computer. The first computers were designed by people writing things down with pencils on pieces of paper. And now computers are designed by computers, or people using computers, and assembled by machine-operated robots. So that's a huge change. This is the world we live in, but the changes are coming faster and faster. Think about it for a minute about project management. Does anybody even remember waterfall? Right. Yes, a few of us do. We can't do that anymore. Agile is for everybody. Spotify says, think it, build it, ship it, tweak it. Right? We're into minimum viable product these days. We don't have time anymore, right? Does this ever feel just slightly overwhelming? Does to me. Let me tell you that I really like old movies, and who in here likes Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn movies? Yeah. Did you know that this movie, Desk Set from 1957, is a knowledge management movie? It is really all about stuff coming in and scaring people. There is drama and suspense as Spencer Tracy comes to consult at a company that is a very ill-disguised IBM with this giant computer, and all of the librarians, who are incredible people. They were early knowledge management people. We know that libraries and KM go together. They were a little bit worried they were going to lose their jobs. And I wonder if anybody could be vulnerable enough to say, have you ever felt like AI might make the knowledge management community a little bit smaller? Sometimes people worry. Yeah? Okay. So I think sometimes we feel like technology is this giant foot that's about to land on KMers, and we don't know what to do. There's AI, there's basically auto everything, there's machine learning, and there's stuff that just ain't my tech. It's not that I'm against it, it's just not mine. I don't want it, I'm going to resist it. Well, it's everywhere, and it's time for us to embrace it, right? As the myriad of these technologies come in, I know some of us worry, what is the role of the human in knowledge management when these machines can do things that previously we used to do? We used to curate, we used to tag. They perform functions that we used to perform. What's the answer? Well, let's step back for a minute and look at some research. I really like this. It's very, very simple. Anybody in the audience know Dr. Denise Bedford? She's a marvelous woman. She's an academic. She's written a lot about KM. She's doing a series of 6 educational books right now. And she has laid out the 10 facets of KM. Now, you can argue about them, but it's a pretty good structure. And in fact, I use it every time I need to create a new job description. And you'll notice technology is only 3 of those facets. All of the rest of them are about people. People. Because it is always, always, always about people. We have to love people to bring KM into the future. So I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I see things that are really cool, and I either save them or I park them in my brain, and then when I have to do a presentation, I go back and dig it up, and this is one of those things. I love this thing on Twitter that this guy, Matt Larseneau, put there. Clever people connect the dots. Awesome people connect people. Well, why can't we be clever and awesome, right? Why can't we connect the dots and the people? Why can't KMers be the sense makers with all this AI stuff? Why can't we be the translators? Who is going to do it? Who is going to say what is the right AI approach when a new tool comes in for this business problem? Who is already used to figuring out what is the right way to share knowledge and get information from it to solve a business problem? It's the KM team. It's not IT. If you're in IT, I'm not talking about you because you're the KM people in IT, but you know it's not the rest of your people, right? It's the KM people. Can I get a round of applause for that? It's the KM people. We're the translators, we're the sense makers. There's no reason we should be afraid of AI. We'll just look at it and figure it out. We don't have to know how to do it. That's for other people, and a few of us, not me. But we're the ones they need to help apply what it needs to be for the business. At the previous presentation, our marvelous friends, Kim and Wendy from ExxonMobil, talked about the Shopify presentation from earlier this week. And I wasn't able to go to that one, but I feel like I was there because of what you said. Don't love the solution, love the problem. Again, that's the KM people. We can help figure out the answer to the problem. We can be the sense makers. It's not about the tool, but we should learn about them, right? So here's an example. I got up this morning really early and added some slides to my presentation because of my experience yesterday. And Jane, I'm going to quote you in a minute, and I didn't ask your permission. I hope I'm all right. Yesterday, I went to this marvelous session that was given by Brian McBreen of Amgen, which is a giant, giant pharmaceutical company. And he had 2 really good examples of real-life AI prototypes that they are using and pursuing in their company. They get it. Guess what? Brian is not an IT guy. He's a KM guy. They're so pleased with the way these things are looking that Brian's traveling all over the world, not just the country, the world, traveling so much that actually he's complaining about having to sit in economy. But just don't go there if you happen to meet him. And they see how it's going to work for them. And I don't know if you can see it, but at the bottom there, it says, partnering domain expertise, that's people, with data science is critical for developing these tools. So in his example, he was saying that it takes people to look at this really cool trending stuff that's coming up from the AI, that they're pointing at their knowledge-sharing areas, and they're seeing these trends by pooling all this stuff together. But it's the people who make that make sense and make a difference with it. So he's got a different A for AI. His A is augmenting intelligence. Not artificial. It ain't artificial, people. It's a report from a machine that a person looks at. Maybe there's another A. In the awards ceremony earlier, I heard a different A next to intelligence. Sadly, I can't remember which word it was. Maybe it was accelerated. Maybe it was advanced. Maybe there are some other A's that you could use in your own company. Well, Jane, I did say I was going to quote you. We had a little exchange by email yesterday about something else, and you said, and this is another reason I needed a note, because if I'm going to quote the leader of this conference, I better get it right. She said, I really felt after the keynotes this morning that even if it's not perfect yet, the machines are going to learn and take over the backroom stuff so we can focus on higher level knowledge sharing and partnerships for the bigger enterprise. Bingo! That's what we're talking about here. So first, though, let's talk about some of those higher level skills. I took this picture at a benchmarking session at APQC. Who knows APQC? Shout out for APQC. APQC this summer with ConocoPhillips and Rockwell Aerospace, who presented 2 sessions earlier. They're both amazing. And Merck. And we were talking about skills for the future, and Lauren Trees of APQC pulled up this slide that she had given at their process conference. And I would like to point out that this is actually what Jane was saying earlier. The machines can take over the busy work, but we've got to really work on the people work, right? It's the people work, the thinking skills, the critical skills, the facilitation skills. These are actually the skills of the future, because if we're going to be the sense makers, if we're going to be the translators for all that wonderful stuff that the platforms and the AI stuff digs up for us, we need to know our stuff. Is anybody familiar with the Innovator's DNA? It was published, a 6-year report that was published by Harvard Business Review. Okay, it's really cool. And they name the 5 skills that they learned that the world's most innovative CEOs had. And those 5 skills, a couple of them are on here, but they also really reminded me of KMers when I heard them. They are associating, observing, questioning, networking, and experimenting. Does that sound like KM or what? Right? Isn't it our job to teach people to fish out in the organization and to help spread all of these power skills, which is what they called it at ExxonMobil in the previous presentation? They also added collaboration and innovation. I think it is our job. There's a lot of stuff we can do to help the rest of our organizations get ready to be the translators and the sense makers as well. So moving on into this next section, how am I doing on time, Scott?
Good.
I'm good? How good? Slow down or speed up? Good. All right. Okay, keep the pace. We did say your start game is never your end game. So here's just a few different examples. And so we're going to talk about technology evolutions, facilitated collaboration, which is part of our KM evolution, and partnerships. Oh my. Moving right into some examples. And this will take a minute. So if I'm ahead on time, Scott, this will take a while. So we're moving into the technology future, but it's actually already here. When I was terrified about giving this talk, I was thinking, what do I know about KM of the future? You know, there's all this AI stuff out there. We're not really doing any of it. Yes, we are. It's everywhere. So you see some examples here. That top one on the left, you might also be interested in. Office 365 is giving us that for free, or for our enterprise license. It just popped up on our enterprise wiki. That is AI. It's looking at things that are like what we're looking at. One of these things is like the other, and suggesting them to us based not only on that, but also on our own behaviors. Lessons learned in a data lake. Doesn't that sound interesting? Well, in our company, which is very large, as you know, we have uncountable lessons learned databases because we have many, many departments and people in those 48 countries. We have no single lessons learned database. I wanted to do a single lessons learned database back when we were only 14,000, and my boss at the time said, don't touch it. It's a nightmare. You won't win. It'll be a time sink. Don't do it. So I didn't do it. I was sad. But my vision lately has been, what if we could just point a really cool hip search to all these different ones and then have it search those, and then it could bubble up solutions for anybody who wanted to know something about 2-inch valves or 40-foot tubing hangers or stuff like that that our company does. Well, I told our IT business partner that, and he said, I'll put it on the list for next year. And then our company announced it was going to split into 2 companies. And so my next year budget sort of went away because we're going to be focused on other things. However, a young man in subsea engineering who has a lessons learned database created a wiki page in our wiki, and he started linking all the rest of the lessons learned databases that he could find. That's kind of cool. That's not AI, but it is a better solution than not knowing what's out there. And then he went to Digital Services International, which is like you over there, working in digital but also in IT. And he requested a single search to put all that stuff in a data lake and then have it bubble up. I didn't have to request it, but guess who's going to end up being the business owner for this thing? It's going to be me, because it cannot be a 32-year-old engineer in subsea. It's going to belong to everyone. And so sometimes KM is just serendipity. I think they're synonymous. We've become bot handlers. We needed a bot last year. Our senior VP for HR said, hey, we want a bot with our new learning experience platform. Who wants to work on it? He put it in Yammer. That's pretty advanced. And of course, who raised their hand? It was the KM team. That Tammy here in the front row worked on that. We learned all about bots. We trained the bot. The bot was smart. The bot, we had a naming contest for it. It had a personality. It's a cheeky bot. It is a fun and lively bot. Now, we could not deploy the bot at the end of the day because European GDPR requirements just got in the way. The bot obviously would know too much about us, but that's okay. We learned about botness, and maybe one day we'll be able to actually deploy it. Office 365 gave us something else up there on the top right. They have natural language processing in Microsoft Stream. And so for our Illuminate podcast, and somewhere in here in this room is Suella, who is our internal product manager for our podcast. There is a nice little transcript right alongside as you're listening to the podcast from Stream. That's AI. It heard the voices, it turned it into text, which is really cool. I can't say this talk without talking about our friends at MITRE. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're always way ahead of all the rest of us. So any talk about KM of the future, I just should say MITRE, go talk to them. But they have this cool thing called anticipatory knowledge delivery. And I'll just ask you to look up MITRE and look that up. It's really, really neat. And then the last thing you see on this slide is the crowd science and idea jams. And that is a little bit of a transition to one of the oh my things, because we are now entering the crowdsourcing zone. Was anyone here in the presentation that Luis and Adrian there in the back gave yesterday afternoon talking about platforms and tools for crowdsourcing? All right. Okay, you've already seen this slide. I liked it, so I stole it. A big part of our KM evolution and our KM skills was that we all became trained facilitators. And we facilitate using two platforms, MeetingSphere and Spigot. If you want to write that down, you can look it up or talk to Adrian and Luis in the back. We can facilitate virtually, we can facilitate in person, we can use tools or not, but the crowd science behind these things is really, really cool, and it has allowed us to get our sticky little KM fingers further into the organization, which is really where we want to be, right? We want to be on their speed dial. And just a little bit more about that. It was a nice slide, Adrian, thanks for sending it to me. There's some benefits from this. We can help people make their decisions faster. We can give everyone an equal voice because they can speak truth to power using the anonymous capabilities. It helps us grow that collaborative culture. We can use it instead of traveling, and we can improve the meeting experience. I think there's a whole lot of facilitation in the KM of the future. Our friends in KM at ConocoPhillips agree. They have put in a facilitation practice, and we like to say that facilitation is a gateway drug to KM. If you can't get them to believe in it one way, try facilitation, because you will have a seat at their table, and you will know what their knowledge-sharing problems are, and you can help them solve it. So, where are we at TechnipFMC? Where do we report? Where is knowledge management? Well, personally, I have reported to just about everyone you can report to, as I said earlier, but right now, we are in people development. We're with learning and talent management and also with people engagement. And this kind of makes sense because it's all about people and it's all interconnected. And can you imagine if we could get this right? And we haven't cracked this nut yet, but if we could get this right, and we wouldn't have to experience or have our business units experience different things with each of us. Their high potential people dealt with in one way and their knowledge sharing problems in another way. and they're learning in another way, but if it was all interconnected, wouldn't that be amazing? ExxonMobil's working on it. Looks like they're doing a pretty good job. I want to hear what you have to say about your successes. We have started on it, though, and I brought you a few examples. And partnerships, as Jane's quote said, partnerships are how you get there, I think. The theme there, I got your back and you've got mine, that's what's got to be behind the partnerships. It can't be where you're working for you or you're working for us. We have to be in this together. So I have an Office 365 logo there. The example behind that is IT. Anyone here have IT just roll out Office 365 and not tell anyone, no training, no nothing? You didn't know what to do. People were upset. They were screaming in the halls, running up and down. No one knew. Did it happen? Did it happen? It happened. Right. It happened at our company. I was actually speaking before Jean-Claude Monet of Microsoft at a quality conference. And I was so glad after I sat down that I had gone first, because he started talking about what Office 365 could do. And the meeting ground to a halt as everyone got their phones out and started looking at theirs saying, well, ours doesn't do that. And he would say, yes, it does. Oh, no, they had never been shown all of the things that Office 365 could do. Well, our IT figured out if we partner with KM, they can help us. They can reach out. They can pull together tools and posters and training sessions and teach people how to use Microsoft Teams. Tammy there in the front row has sat with executives and showed them hands-on how to use Microsoft Teams. She developed the training materials. It's not that hard. Actually, IT knows they need the help. They want it. Here we are. We know what to do. We know how to share knowledge on these things. We should be doing this. If they're not asking you, go knock on their door. It's a great way, again, to get a seat at the table. On the right there, you see a picture of us supporting an HSE, Health, Safety, and Environmental external consortium that our company leads. That's just another way you can partner with quality. I hate to pick on you, Tammy, but these pictures were easy to find. Then on the bottom left, we partnered with Learning last year to roll out a new learning experience platform. And this was a really big partnership in which we did all kinds of things. I've got a little list here. I'm going to just read it because I don't want to forget something. We did focus groups, established requirements, helped them figure out what the right metrics would be, which we met, by the way. Training, promos on Yammer. We ordered promotional items. We did lobby launches. We helped people share learning about how to use these tools. We created presentations for the executives so they would understand why it was important and how we needed to be a learning organization, as ExxonMobil said. We came up with strategies. We worked with a branding agency. We were their partner. Now, you may say not all of that is knowledge management. Well, if it helped us become a learning organization, why not? Why can't it be knowledge management, right? Aren't we the sense makers and the translators and the utility infielders, to use a baseball term, even though we didn't win? Not bitter, not bitter. That last one there is our technology fellows. This is a huge partnership we have with talent management. Talent management is in charge of high potentials, and they're in charge of this new program that they're trying to put in place, technology fellows and technical expertise, for about 2,000 of our 10,000 engineers. You know, those people that are called distinguished engineers, or lots of companies have them. Well, talent management knows how to identify them, but they don't know what to do with them. And so we literally begged them to let us help them. We got a seat at the table. We do know what to do with them. We helped them. We facilitated a brainstorming where they figured out what you have to do to become a technical expert. And one of those things is, guess what, everybody? Share knowledge. That's the way to have a partnership that benefits KM and allows KM to be permeated into the organization. So, I talked about this earlier, and you didn't tell me it wasn't there. This is the theme of partnerships. I got your back, you got mine. So, what are we doing here, right? We're benchmarking. None of us individually can know what the KM of the future is. ExxonMobil, I almost said hallelujah when they started talking about reach out to each other. We do. In Houston, we meet up for lunch. We have knowledge transfer sessions all the time where we learn and listen with other companies. Actually, several of you in the audience, we've done that, not just at these conferences, but these are a great place to do that. We go to events and we learn and we see people. I challenge all of you, you've got a great KM story. Why not submit it as an abstract? next summer when they start collecting it for KM World, because telling your story is a great way to hear other people's story. So the point is here, don't go it alone. We won't go it alone. I need to learn from Brian McBreen how he figured out how to match his cool data AI stuff to their KM platforms and got those trends. And I'm sure he will tell me because he shares. So in summary, a couple more slides after this, don't get too excited. In summary, we're in a great position because we can partner, we can translate, and we can help the business. And I want to kind of put you out of your misery on the suspense from the movie from 1957. You probably figured it out, though. The librarians and the computers were complementary. Everything worked better once everyone understood it. Once the librarians weren't scared anymore, and once Spencer Tracy and his helper there understood the value of the people. And of course, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn got together like they always do. So for us, KM and AI, it's all good. We got this. If we don't know how to do it yet, that's okay. We'll help each other. We'll figure it out. And the final thing to talk about here is let's just revisit those themes. We have to embrace technology because it's not going anywhere. We have to love people because they're the whole reason we do all of this. And we have to be flexible because our start game is never, ever, ever our end game. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, we have time for questions. That is so cool. Did I talk too fast? Question right here in the front.
When you were talking about facilitating conversations, are you actually using various technologies to facilitate those when you're not in the room?
Yes. The question is, do we use technology platforms for facilitated collaboration? Yes, we do. We use 2 technology platforms. One is called MeetingSphere, and it's not super expensive. Not promoting any tools. There's another tool out there that does the same thing, Think Tank. I'm sure there are others. It creates the workshop environment, 10 people, 20, 70, virtually. And you can imagine in the room when you have the big flip charts around and people are using stickies to prioritize, the tool does that and a lot more. It also, as I said, can be anonymous, so you can speak truth to power, so everyone's voice can be the same, carry the same weight. The other tool we use is called Spigot, and there are many out there like that. In fact, I first learned of tools like this from ExxonMobil, and I think they use a different one. There are quite a few good ones, and that is a crowdsourcing idea management tool that allows you to go out to hundreds or thousands of people, and we have used that to great success. For instance, when we wanted to figure out what changes do we need to make in our subsea business so that we present one face to the customer, since we are a merged company. And that uses crowd science and lets the people who participate actually bubble up the right answers to the top, because they're the ones that know, right? We don't know the right answer. And we also use facilitation techniques that we've been trained in, the 6 Ps, and I can't name them all, but Luis and Adrian in the back know what problems may we face, who are the principals involved in this, et cetera. And then just one more comment, I think she might be somewhere in the room. Nancy Dixon has really great stuff on conversation, because that's a word that you used in your question, and I would just point you to Nancy to talk about conversation. Other questions? Right there. Hey, Donna.
So your list about, what was and what came after that, you were thinking if you were going to do a list like that for KM, the presentation covered where we're going, what's getting left by the wayside?
Well, I'm scared to answer that because I think people might throw tomatoes at me, but Jane actually said it in her quote. I left this little bit out because I was worried people might get scared. Maybe manual tagging is going away. Maybe manual curation is going away. Maybe humans just have to look at results, a test set. A lot of stuff has already gone away. Has anybody ever created 100 different filtered views in SharePoint? By hand? Yeah. these things are going away and machines are doing them for us. I think there's probably a much better and more articulate and intelligent answer to that, so I would ask it to the crowd, since I didn't think of it ahead of time. It's a great question. Is there anything out there that you think has already gone away that has been replaced by technology in KM? Instructor-led training is this really good point. Instructor-led training. Remember, it used to be a 70-20-10 model for learning. We've tried to squish that, to like 50 on the job experience, 45 social learning, and only 5% instructor-led. Really, really good point. Yeah.
Since you spoke about skills, right, like as online collaboration facilitators, the sense makers, when it comes to AI and business. So how to, because the camp people you have often have been there for years and they had other skills. So any ideas or thoughts on you have been in your company or if you have seen that in other companies on how to actually upskill camp staff because they don't necessarily have these skills or not, but they might need them, right?
I do. I have an example. The scaredest I've been this year was when Luis, who's in the back there, and Tammy were in Paris for almost 3 weeks. I was the person in the Houston office who was left with the responsibility to create the agenda for the 3-day workshop for our technology fellows who were coming from 2 vastly different companies. One headquartered in Houston, we're cowboys, and one headquartered in Paris, we are foodies. And there was only about 20 of them, but that's a group of people who are very experienced. They are the top of the mountain, but we had to make them into a team. And because Tammy and Luis weren't there and I got to do some real work, I took a chance and I actually put a 3-hour storytelling workshop in their 3-day workshop. And we taught them how to tell stories, and they did not know. And we were so lucky that Jane picked up the workshop and we did it here this week. But they left being able to tell their story and to better transfer knowledge. And that's just one example. I think we're all lifelong learners. And if you're a fellow or someone in a company, unless you're just, waiting to be laid off or retire, people welcome learning, but it has to be given to them in a format that they can embrace instead of, you need to do this, you need to be digital, or, you need to move into 2010. Good question. Thank you.
You have time for one.
Apparently I have time for one more. I'm going to be sad if there's no more questions. Scott, I think there's no... You can ask me a question. You got a question?
No, you've answered it all.
Oh, okay. I've answered all. Thank you so much, everyone. It's a joy to speak
Thank
with you.
you.
Yeah.